Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your brand new source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm here, one of your hosts, as always, with my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm enjoying a day without rain here. We've had the atmospheric river dumping on us here in California, and today was one of the few days without rain the last week and the upcoming week.
Yeah, we've been getting hit by a mini storm down here, too, and we also got a reprieve from that, so that's nice. But anyway, we are here to preview the Packers winning in game this Sunday night against the Detroit Lions. Dad, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. The Lions make me a little nervous. I think they're a better team than Minnesota. So here's a question about how you're feeling. Do you want Seattle? Would you prefer if Seattle wins and knocks the Lions out? Or would you prefer that Seattle loses and puts the Lions under pressure to win?
I think it doesn't matter. I've seen a lot of people talk about this. I know that a lot of people, especially Seattle fans, aren't happy that if they do win and are in a spot to contend for a playoff spot, that they feel that Detroit won't try, essentially because they don't have a spot to play for. They're going to try either way. It's the fighting Dan Campbells, as I've heard some people call them.
The Seattle fans just don't know Dan Campbell well enough, if that's what they think, because I think he's going to be, he's going to be out there like a mad dog trying to win that game.
Biting kneecaps, as he says.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it matters if the Lions are playing for a playoff spot or playing to be above 500 or just play into. They would play as hard in like a flag football 2-touch game on the street amongst the parked cars as they are going to on Sunday night
against the in-laws.
Exactly. That team plays hard no matter who is out there.
Spike it in the bride's face, a la what was that?
Was it Wedding Crashers? No,
Wedding Crashers volleyball game.
It definitely might have been Wedding Crashers. But anyway, we're getting a bit off topic. We're going to break this game down for you. We do these pre-games every single week, so if you like what you hear, come on back next week. We usually do them on Thursdays or Fridays, depending on when the game is. And then we also do post-games right after the game, usually Sunday nights or Monday mid-morning, mid-afternoon, mid-evening, whenever we have time, depending on when the game is. So yeah, come check us out. We're going to do 2 episodes a week as the season continues, for as long as it continues, and then 1 episode a week during the offseason, kind of breaking down the draft and offseason moves for the Packers. But yeah, Dad, let's get into it, and let's start with any news and notes. I don't think I really have anything new for the Packers this week, although they did add a new kicker, Matt Amendola, to the practice squad, so it sounds like not great news for Ramiz Ahmed.
Right. I was thinking, actually, when he pulled his groin in warm-ups, that he wouldn't be ready to go this week. So we'll find out tomorrow whether they activate Amendola, however you pronounce his name.
It's 2 M's. I thought it was
it's 2 M's.
Amendola, but it could definitely be Amendola.
I've never heard it pronounced, but maybe they'll try the same thing where they activate him to kick off like they were trying to with Ahmed last week. We'll see. But that's what I was thinking when I saw him get signed.
Yeah,
I guess they had a practice squad player get hurt today.
Oh, did they? That's unfortunate. I missed that one. Do you remember who it was?
No, it was not.
Well, you try and see if you can dig that up while I start with the injury report, and we'll tag that on. But yes, for this game, the injury report is officially out, and it's looking pretty clean for the Packers. The only real item of concern is Josiah DeGuara, who is questionable with a calf injury. He sustained this calf injury on practice on Thursday and did not, or maybe late Wednesday, but he didn't practice on Thursday. He did practice on Wednesday. And then on Friday, however, he was upgraded to a limited participant and now is questionable, like we said. It's a decent chance he plays, I think, the fact that he was able to practice at least in some capacity on Friday. And, Dad, they really need him. He's been a really key cog in their run game so far.
Oh, he's made a huge difference in their kind of ability to get downfield and take on
second-level guys.
The second-level defenders. Especially leading for Jones around the outside. But also, he also does some up-the-middle blocking as well as a kind of traditional fullback.
Yeah, I think it was Field Yates on the Mina Kimes show this week when they were talking about this game, was talking about how when the Packers, a big reason the Packers run game is working is when they trot out there on the field, they pretty much have 7 O-linemen with the 5 O-linemen, Mercedes Lewis and Josiah DeGuara. And he makes a good point. Like, those 2 tight ends in particular are really valuable to this run game as blockers right now. And they're a big reason that they're being able to break off these like runs essentially 10, 9, 20-yard runs. Like, they've had a good amount of explosive plays with Aaron Jones to the outside, and those two, the work of those two and the work of Lazard blocking have been big components of that.
So I found the practice squad as a linebacker. DQ Thomas had a broken leg, suffered in practice maybe yesterday.
Goodness,
freak injury where he collided knees with another player.
Oh man, that sucks. Well, yeah, and then beyond that for the injury report, nothing really for the Packers, but the Lions have a decent list of players. Unfortunately, kind of tentative.
Some
to
of them
play.
important.
Some
like
of them very
frontline,
important. Yes.
Frontline, heavy snap count players.
Yes.
And
so
some of their best.
They have one player out and 5 players questionable. The player who is out is Kayode Awosika. I hope I pronounced that correct. Out with an ankle injury. He is one of their backup guards, so they are missing a little depth along the O-line. Beyond that, speaking of the offensive line, Frank Ragnow, their starting center, who is quite a good player, is questionable with a foot injury. He did not practice Wednesday or Thursday, but he did in a limited fashion on Friday. That's a big one to watch, Dad, because if he plays or doesn't, I think it really impacts their run game and the ability of the Packers' defensive front to hang with this really good O-line.
Oh, yeah, he's the best offensive lineman. He's the best graded one. He has been for several years. He makes a lot of things go for them. So that's a huge thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah, former first-round pick. I mean,
he played last week, I think, with at least one of these same injuries, though he left the game early last week with them, pounding the Bears into the
they
turf.
Were up by
I think
a lot.
They could afford to rest him.
Yeah, so that's definitely going to be one to keep an eye on. I think that's probably the most important on this injury report. It seems like he's probably going to play, given that he's now upgraded to questionable, and he practiced at least a little on Friday. But he's not going to be 100%. And so that's something also to keep an eye on, is his performance in game. Beyond that, Jeff Okudah, one of their starting corners, was downgraded to questionable this Friday because of an elbow injury he sustained in practice. That's going to be a big deal because he's probably their best corner right now, and it's not a great pass defense to begin with, which we'll talk about a bit later.
Yeah, their coverage grades across the board in the secondary are not good. And Okudah has, I think he started off the year okay, but has gotten worse as the year's gone on. It's not, but yeah, their options to replace him are not that great either.
Yeah. Beyond that, Michael Brockers, one of their D linemen, is questionable with an ankle injury. He was not listed on Wednesday and then didn't practice Thursday or Friday, so that seems like maybe he's not going to play at all. Deshaun Elliott, their starting free safety, is questionable with a shoulder injury. He did practice all 3 days, though, in a limited capacity. And then Jason Kabinda, their fullback, is questionable with a knee injury. DNP Wednesday, limited Thursday and Friday. Dad, any of those stick out to you? The Brockers one seems like the main one who's not going to play, I would say, right?
Yeah, and I think probably, I guess one question is Deshaun Elliott. I think he's coming back from injury. Is that right?
I am not 100% sure. I can check for a second.
Difference if he's going to be able to go.
I know that he, like we said, he at least practiced all week. So I'm thinking he's going to play. I know he also made several comments in the media this week about how he doesn't feel like Aaron Rodgers respects them and he doesn't like the way
is he the one who's been saying that?
Yeah.
You see people's tweets. It's like, oh, they've been playing excellent. They've been one of the hottest and best teams. Rodgers says, he's like, man, I can't believe the disrespect he's throwing to the Lions.
Well, to be fair, Rodgers said they're not the same old Lions, which is disrespectful. Like that's kind of disrespectful.
It's disrespectful to the old Lions.
I mean, it's disrespectful to the Lions as an organization. Let's be like, that's disrespectful. When you say when he says they're actually good, like
with surprise,
as though with a very big tone of surprise, they're not the same old Lions. Like that's kind of
they should be happy they're not the same old Lions as the Lions.
Some of these guys were on those teams also. To be fair,
and they should remember what it was like when they were coached by Matt Patricia.
Well, they should remember that we led for 0 seconds of each of those games, and that they should have won both of them.
And then if you go further back, they're the
that was like in 2009, though. That was literally 13 years.
Well, those are the old Lions. Well, it depends
yes.
how long ago you mean old Lions.
Well, anyways, Beyond that, though, pretty clean injury report.
Beyond searching for motivation.
Yes, but pretty clean injury report either way. Dad, should we get into the rest of our game preview, the meat and potatoes?
Sure. We can start going into that.
Start us off with our blast
from the past.
Go ahead and start us off with our blast from the past, which is where we kind of review the last time these teams played. We think it's nice to see how this matchup went last time, especially in division rivalries like this where we've already played them once this year.
Right. So that was probably the Packers' low point of the season, where at the time
I said they were dead in the water. And after this game, I said they were completely done. I was done with them. I was like, nope, that's it. That's the rest. Like, we're done. They were
and going into that game. It was like they felt that was
4-8,
that was
right?
the game. No, that was the beginning. It was earlier than that. They were
because it was week 9. That's right. So they would have been 3-6, I think. Yeah, would have been 3-6.
And it was the start. It was the start of the Lions turnaround. Actually,
yeah.
I think it was week 8. Actually, it might have been when the Lions were. It was
week 9, and then the Packers fell to 3-6. Looking at it right here,
okay,
and they lost that game 15-9. And the Packers only scoring 9 points against a team that was averaging 28 points allowed per game. That I remember at the time being apoplectic.
Going into that game, it was like Lions might be one of the worst graded defenses ever, and then they fired their defensive backs coach.
Yeah.
So the Packers in this game, they outgained the Lions 389 to 254.
Yeah.
389 yards for 9 points.
And Rodgers
won the time.
Three picks in the red zone.
He threw 3 picks at the goal line or in the end zone. Here are the trips into Detroit territory, which the Packers were very effective at getting into. An interception from the Detroit 5, an interception from the Detroit 1, a punt from the Detroit 44, an interception from the Detroit 23, which was intercepted at the goal line. I think that was the pass to Tunyon. A touchdown from 20. Yay! 2-point conversion fails because the Lions had gotten the 2. A field goal from the 7 and turnover on downs from the 17.
Yeah.
So they had a boatload of chances in the red zone, like inside the 23, where they got
they moved the ball
a
ton in this game. They averaged 5.6 yards per play. Like, they were moving the ball. It's just they decided they wanted to shoot themselves in the foot at every given opportunity. So just don't do that in this game, and hopefully things will be better.
Yep. So as for what's going on in Lions world more generally,
so this is our segment. We like to talk about essentially how the Lions have been doing recently, and they've been actually a pretty dang good team since then.
Yep. So after starting 1-6, they have gone 7-2. Starting with the Green Bay game. The Lions fired their defensive backs coach before that game. They were giving up 32 points per game before and only 21 points per game after. Though some of that, again, I'll talk a little bit more in more detail about that. Goff's last interception was in that game.
The game against us, week 9?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can get a nice little repeat of that. And
by weighted DVOA per Football Outsider, so this gives more weight to the recent games, the Lions are now 7th in the NFL by weighted DVOA. The Packers are 9th, so they've also been moving up by weight. Compare this to the Vikings who we played last week, who in weighted DVOA are 29th.
Yeah, so what that does is it gives more credence to the more recent games, kind of gives a credence to the idea that a team is heating up at the right time, and which both the Packers and Lions are doing, and the Vikings are not quite as doing.
I don't know what formula it is, whether it's
I think it's
3 weeks, the last 4 weeks.
I think it's also proprietary, and they don't tell anyone, so it's not really.
So I can't tell you exactly what that covers. But
speaking of covers, though, the Packers are favored in this game, Dad. The Packers are favored by 3.5, according to ESPN. In Lambeau, which is interesting because it does mean that they think this is pretty much a push, a pick 'em on a neutral site.
Yeah, I thought I'd seen 4.5, but maybe it may have moved since opening at 4.5.
I'm just seeing what you put down here on the sheet as 3.5. But So it could be your thick fingers smashing the buttons all over again.
Just smash the buttons.
We know your hands
and see
are
what text comes out.
We know your hands are 90% palm. But anyway, yeah. So probably more of a pick'em at a neutral site, which I tend to agree with. I think the Lions and Packers are actually pretty similarly talented teams. Beyond that, yeah, I think the biggest thing is home field advantage. Lions having to play outside when they're usually inside. I actually think that's a decently tangible advantage in this game.
Yeah, and I think this is holding up this year, where by DVOA the Lions are 12th on the road, and only while they're 5th at home, so they're much better at home than on the road.
But
and
still not bad on the road.
No, it's not bad, but it's like a 7. But this is relative to everybody else's road, so they're having a 7-spot drop in the road. This isn't comparing somebody's road to other teams' homes.
Other teams, yeah.
And while the Packers are 8th at home and 13th on the road, so
there's a slightly better team than us by DVOA in most respects.
Yeah, so we get to go against their sort of 12th ranking versus our 8th ranking.
Yeah, and they almost beat them. They almost beat them in Detroit last time, and that game was incredibly frustrating.
If they didn't screw the pooch in one of the most spectacular fashions I've ever seen.
No,
for a team that
they did.
Well,
I've
for a
seen
team
far
that
more
outplayed.
spectacular. I've seen far more spectacular fashions.
But they had to do it so many times.
I've seen the Packers lose in far more spectacular fashion than that. I will tell you.
Yes, so we could talk about various playoff games, but they did
one of the most spectacular losses in the regular season I've seen from the Packers.
And the fact that they had to do it, that they had to blow it like 5 different times.
Yeah, they just could not get out of their own way, especially in the red zone.
It's one of the worst red zone performances.
Yeah, but I don't want to say it's all because the Packers lost that game. The Lions are a pretty good team, Dad, and I think that they have a lot of things about them that make them a tough matchup. And I think that it kind of all starts with their offense. Their offense is suddenly, led by Jared Goff, one of the best offenses in the league. These numbers are per RBSDM.com and Football Outsiders. They are 6th in the league in EPA per play on offense, 6th in DVOA on offense. They have an excellent passing game, 3rd in dropback EPA, and 5th in passing DVOA. However, I know a lot of people have talked about this week, but statistically, their run game isn't actually as good as you'd think. They're 21st in rush EPA, 18th in rush success rate, and 15th in rush DVOA. So they're a slightly average run offense, despite having some very recent success on the ground, and despite the fact that their offensive line, another strength of theirs, PFF has them as the 7th best run blocking team and the 21st pass blocking team. So I would say that the big difficulty with this matchup, Dad, is the Lions' offense is one of the more dynamic and explosive offenses in the league, and they will just run up points on you if you're not careful.
Yeah, it's interesting in looking at the offensive grades. The offensive line grades for the Lions, depending on where you go. So you had PFF has them better as a run blocking team than a pass blocking team.
Mm-hmm. Despite their rushing numbers not being all that impressive as like a unit.
Right, but by DVOA, they're the second in adjusted sack rate. Though they're only 15th, they're sort of middle of the pack in ESPN's pass block win rate. And then I don't know if I have their run block win rate on the tip of my fingers, but I think that's actually their DVOA, so Football Outsiders run blocking is much worse than their pass blocking, than their adjusted sack rate. And maybe their ESPN run block win rate and pass block win rate are both similarly in the middle of the pack. So it's interesting that PFF has it flipped in comparison.
Yeah.
So there's kind of all over the map on what different people think of their offensive line.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because you look at they have a pretty beefy offensive line. I think they'd be moving guys a lot. And I think, do you have any other things that make them a tough matchup for the offense? Because, their defense isn't great. But let's talk a little bit about the offense a little more. I have a couple things I want to add on their defense, but for the offense, it's interesting because PFF at least has them as a good run blocking. You said ESPN, or you said DVOA has them as a meh run blocking unit.
Right. Let me find.
Well, either way, it seems like, and you would think, like, looking at the running backs they had, I know Jamal's had an excellent year with touchdowns. And I know DeAndre Swift has missed a lot of the year, and they've had to lean on guys like Justin Jackson. And I think, is it Craig Reynolds? I think is the other one. Their other running back, their fourth guy. And I know that definitely has some impact on it, but you'd think that they would grade out better at run blocking. You think that they would, with the fact that they're grading well in run blocking in some metrics at least, and they have running backs who I think a lot of people would say are very respectable running backs, you think that they would have statistically a better run offense than this, because their rushing success rate and their run EPA and the rushing DVOA, I know these are all just a bunch of numbers in the end, but they are pretty indicative of success a lot of the times and very predictive of like whether or not they're going to have a decent run offense. And this is all to say, they did just run for 260 yards against the Bears. So you can talk about all these numbers all you want, but they did they're coming off an excellent performance. It's kind of, don't you think it's kind of interesting that despite the fact that they have a lot of the ingredients of what you would think would be a good run game, they haven't statistically had one?
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. And there are a couple things I think, it's weird. It's how different everybody is. So I looked at Football Outsiders. So they have them kind of in the like high teens and 20s for a lot of their run blocking metrics. So this would be, opponent adjusted, where their power success stuffed rank are like around plus 20 plus or minus a couple, while their pass pro is second. This is like really high. It's just they're just the different metrics are they're not agreeing with each other, which is I haven't seen them in this much disagreement. Yeah, which is kind of interesting.
But I think it's safe
maybe it means that maybe their opponents have just been kind of weak, and without the the opponent adjusted metrics that Football Outsiders uses, they are scoring well on a sort of play-by-play basis when you don't control for their strength of schedule.
Yeah,
perhaps that's the difference. They've looked good on a play-by-play, but they've played bad teams.
Yeah, their run game is a mystery to me, because you'd think it would be better just looking at the ingredients. Their passing game is also a mystery because you think it would be worse looking at the ingredients, given the fact that we kind of know what Jared Goff is. He's run some good offenses before, but you kind of have to set things up for him ahead of time in some ways. And they do have some decent receivers and a good pass blocking O-line. So I suppose they have some ingredients, but top 5 offense and passing in most passing metrics, I mean, that's incredibly impressive. But beyond that, Dad, do you have anything else that you wanted to say for their strengths? For me, the only other thing is they have a really nice young edge rushing duo. They're Justin Houston and Aiden Hutchinson are first and second in the league amongst rookies in sacks, which is definitely something to keep an eye on. Beyond that, did you have any other strengths for the Lions?
Well, just mentioned for Houston, he's only played really 6 games.
Yeah, he's on a tear.
He's got 8 sacks already because he was on the practice squad as a 6th-round pick, and they finally signed him to the active roster. I think they called him up a couple of times, and then end of November they signed him to the active roster.
Yeah, 8 sacks in 6 games. There's nothing. Yeah. That's nothing to scoff at.
But I do have some other things. They have really good special teams. They're number 1 by PFF. Oh. And they get, I think, their kicker. Well,
I hope they're ready for the
kickoffs, which is
I
not
hope they're ready
kicker.
for the Nixon administration. I hope they're ready. He's coming.
Well,
he's coming for everyone.
But I think they get a lot of touchbacks. So
ooh, no
fun.
So
that's the thing that we might not get the chance. I think it might even be their punter who's taking the kicks.
Fox? Is it? No, yeah, it is Fox.
Right, as opposed to Badgley, who
the Money Badger. I love the Money Badger. The Chargers legend. But beyond that, then, very good special.
So the other thing I would say is they have 3 really good receivers, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, speedy too with Chark and Williams, Jameson
Yeah.
Williams. Though, so St. Brown currently is the number 2 PFF graded receiver. So this is like 3 weeks in a row we were facing a top 2 rated receiver because the ratings have actually changed after we shut down Justin Jefferson last week.
Yep. We're just going to have to send Amon-Ra back to 3. I'm sorry, buddy.
Yep.
It's time.
And Chark, I think, has been playing well since coming off early season injuries. Jameson Williams is kind of the wild card. You know, he only got activated a little while ago after the torn ACL in the college national championship game last year. And they haven't used him much yet. So I don't think we really know, and maybe they don't really know, what they're doing with him yet.
Yeah, and I mean, they traded all the way up to 11, I think it was. 11 or 12.
11 or 12, somewhere around there.
To pick him. And so they clearly have very high expectations of him. He might have been the first receiver taken if he hadn't gotten injured in that national championship game. But yeah, I think that he's definitely... The unknown of him is actually kind of a little scary to me. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, we don't really know what to prepare for in terms of how they might use him because they've only targeted him a couple of times, and he had a
last game of the season. You'd think that they'd give him some touches to get him kind of little momentum for next year
or the playoffs, depending on what they're thinking.
That too
is going to be happening. But the other thing I have is keep an eye on Ragnar's availability / health, as we talked about earlier. He's their best graded offensive lineman. And their guards are only kind of average. And Kenny Clark had his worst grade of the year this year against Detroit in the earlier game. And they've had some battles back and forth. Kenny's had some games with good grades. Ragnar's had some games with good grades. It's kind of it's a real battle. But we can talk about who we want to watch later.
Yeah, and extending off of the strengths for the Lions, I think that they have, specifically with that offensive line, some things that are probably going to give the Packers some trouble. And how they match up with the Packers and how they're going to try and exploit the Packers, I think it starts there for me, is that their huge advantage is their offensive line over our defensive line. Kenny is going to have a great game, like you said. We'll talk about players to watch later. We're going to need standout games from Reed again. We're going to need Wyatt to play like a first-round pick. We're going to need the edges to hold up because I think that's a huge disadvantage for the Packers. Huge disadvantage in favor of the Lions in the trenches there when they're on offense and we're on defense. And despite the Lions not really having an amazing run offense, just statistically, the Packers' run defense should still give them a ton of opportunities. The Packers are 31st in run defense per DVOA. And something I found interesting that we retweeted from the Father Son Packers Twitter account, you can find us at Father Son Packer. Mina Kimes recently tweeted out that while the Packers' run defense is very good against zone run concepts, 4th in EPA per play, 5th in yards per carry, 7th in success rate, they are really bad against defending against power run concepts. 30th in EPA per play, 29th in yards per carry, and 32nd in success rate. And per PFF, between DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, the Lions run power on more than 60% of their runs. So the fact that they already kind of favor that does not really bode well for the Packers front seven. And keep in mind, like we said, the Lions are coming off a game where they just ran for 265 yards. So not great.
The Bears totally sold in that game.
Yeah, they did, but
they just rolled over.
The Packers' run defense is fully capable of doing the same thing. And the fact that they already run a majority of what we're terrible at defending against is not exactly ideal for us.
It doesn't exactly give you warm and fuzzy feelings.
No. Not really. I'm feeling a little clammy right now, in fact.
So things that I'm thinking about that the Lions will try to do is I think they'll try to play with pace. They're 8th in seconds per play, while Green Bay is still at 32.
Yeah, I was going to say dead last, I think. Based on the number of timeouts we called to stop plays, I would say dead last.
Right. And the other thing that Detroit is good at, converting in the red zone. They're 4th in red zone success rate, percentage of red zones visits that turn into a touchdown. And Green Bay is only 15th in red zone defense per teamrankings.com. So I think that's
better than our red zone offense, to be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, at least one's sort of okay.
So that's I think a weakness that. So the trick is we got to keep Detroit out of the red zone.
That's all.
I think they're also going to. That's all. I think they're also going to try to spread the ball around a lot, try to get mismatches by having like 5 wide receivers or running backs and tight ends out there running routes to try to find, our 5th best cover man.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they will hesitate to throw it to anybody.
Yeah, and I mean...
So as the running back, Swift has been more of the receiver than Jamal.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that a little bit. I'll talk about it now, but like you said, Swift has been getting 4.8 targets per game, which is 8th most in the league per Fantasy Pros. So that's something to keep an eye on, and I think I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I feel like the Packers have struggled to guard screen passes specifically this year, and I think a lot of that has been on the linebacker play being a little bit all over the place. But we'll talk about that a bit later. Dad, did you have anything else about how you think the Lions are going to try and take advantage of the Packers, or can we give ourselves some hope now?
I think we can give ourselves some hope now.
All right. How do you think the Packers match up well, essentially, are going to take advantage of the Lions?
So, yeah, the Lions' defense is still bad.
Yeah.
And it is still bad even during their 7-2 streak. So you might say whatever the bump was they got from firing their coach or whatever it was has not had as much effect on the road. So that's really they're being this bad road team and bad defense. So I tried to go through game by game before and after that, when they're from their 1-6 stretch and then to their 7-2 stretch, and what has changed. So adjusting for their opponents' like average scoring, which I didn't do the opponent's average like road versus home scoring because that was like too far down the rabbit hole and more time than I had. Their opponents are scoring compared to average when the Lions are on the road was 1.5 points worse. Before they were fired. So when they were 1-6, they were giving up 1.5 points more to their opponents than they scored on average. Since that, during their hot streak, this is also just on the road, they're giving up 5.3 yards more than opponent's average. So they're actually
even worse on the road.
Adjusted for opponent, they've even been worse than before their winning streak. They have not improved in road defense. If anything, they've gotten a little worse. Compare this to the home splits, where they've actually gotten better. They were giving up 13 more per game to their opponents before the winning streak, and now it's down, cut in half to, much better. Actually, they're giving up less on average than their opponents score on average. So they went from being a worse than average defense to an above average defense at home, but on the road, they're still a slightly below average defense by just points per game. Their run stop. So we talk about how the Lions might take advantage of our run defense. The reverse is very much on the table.
Their run defense is really like
it's almost as bad as the Packers. It's pretty close. Their run stop rate per ESPN is 25th, which is close to the Packers' 29th. And by PFF grade, they're essentially the same. They're right next to each other in rankings as Green Bay.
Yeah.
So the Packers should be able to run on them easily.
And this is the type of defense that the Packers usually succeed against, is defenses where you can run the ball. Like the Packers,
right? Because that sets up their whole offense.
Yeah, are usually much better against teams where they're able to run the ball, because they're a bad situational offense. They're a bad 3rd and long offense. They're not great in the red zone. But when you let them run the ball and you let them keep it 3rd and manageable, and you let them actually, the only way they can really move the ball in the red zone is running the ball. They seem to not be able to pass much at the goal line unless you run the play to Mercedes Lewis.
the Mercedes play.
The one play.
Yeah, eventually the opponents are going to catch on to that one play.
They just need to camp on that play at the goal line. Just be ready for it. He's going to throw it to Mercedes on the leak. Just pick that thing and run it the whole way back, because no one's going to be ready for it. But if they can run the ball, they have a chance. I don't know if you got a chance to mention this, but they're 27th in DVOA against the rush. Like they're bad against the run.
Detroit.
Yeah.
In a lot of different ways. And Green Bay is second best in running by PFF. I forget how high they are by DVOA, but it's also I think they're good running the ball. And then their running backs.
Green Bay is third in rush DVOA on offense.
Okay, and they have Jones is the sixth best running back and Dillon 11th best by PFF, and by DVOA Jones is third and Dillon is seventh.
Dillon, though, the thing with Dillon is he is very, very high variance. I feel like some games he'll look unstoppable out there, and then other games he just kind of just gets hit for like 2 and 3 yard gains over and over again.
If you can get his feet before he gets up to like the line, he seems to go down pretty easily there if he gets tripped up in the backfield. Also, let's not forget, so the Lions' run defense is bad. Their pass defense might be worse. Their coverage grade is dead last.
Like I said, their defense overall, the Packers should be able to get it any way they want it. Like the Lions' defense outside of their 2 edge rushers is pretty abysmal.
Yep,
and they might not have Jeff Okudah in this game, like we said. Like they're essentially their best corner on an already not so great unit. Like they should. I think we're gonna have a fun game on our hands. Like it should be high scoring or fun for a neutral observer at least.
This could be this could be an up and down high scoring game.
It's going to be an up and down high scoring game that goes by very quickly because each team is ripping off like 7-minute drives of like 10 carries for 7 yards a carry. It's going to be great.
Unless it's a 1 minute, 75-yard play drive.
That's true.
But do you have some stuff to add on to how the Lions are?
Well, I think, like you said,
are bad.
The Packers should be able to take. The Packers should be able to take advantage of the Lions, like you said. All those things. They've already done it once in Detroit. They took advantage of the Lions' defense over and over again for 5.6 yards a play, 389 yards. Like we said, they just couldn't capitalize. They threw 3 picks in the red zone. As long as they don't beat themselves, they should be able to move. Their offense should be able to move the ball at will, like any way they want it. The problem is if they can stop the Lions. But they should at least, hopefully, it's going to be on the offense to put the Lions in a position where the Lions feel like they have to pass. That's what's really at stake here, I think, is that's how the Packers can take advantage of the Lions. If the Packers can punish this pretty poor defense, not good defense for the Lions, get some points on the board in Lambeau, make Jared Goff with his small hands in the cold, who I know is gambler's fallacy, but he's due for a turnover. Like, I don't believe it. He hasn't thrown one in 8 weeks. I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. But anyway, he should be due for turnovers. You get them to a place where they feel like they have to throw in Lambeau, in the cold, on the road, under pressure. If you can put pressure on Jared Goff, that's another big if, because the Lions' pass blocking is, well, it depends on the metric you look at, but their pass blocking is pretty good. Just if you look at their personnel and you listen to enough analysts whose opinion, at least I trust, at least, if they can make them pass and get some pressure on them, that's how they take advantage of them in this game. You put them in a deficit early and don't let them just run it down your throat all game. That's the big thing for me. That's how I think the Packers can take advantage of this game.
Yeah, so with that, I guess you could lead into what do you want to see from the Packers in this game?
Yeah, and I think, as usual, I usually have defense. You usually have offense. For me, it's limit their running game. Statistically, their running game is not that good. And you have to prove that you can stop a slightly below average run game. Because if you're going to be one of the 2 worst run defenses in the league, you're not, like, there's no point. You're not going to do anything in the playoffs. If you can't even stop this run game, which is, I think it's better than the statistics say, but it's still statistically it's an average run of offense. You should be able to stop that. And I know they just ran all over Chicago, but you should not be laying down like Chicago. And you need to be a good run defense if you even want a prayer against teams like San Francisco and the Eagles and Dallas. Like, to even have a prayer against those teams, you need to be able to stop the run. So that's one thing I want to see. Beyond that, let Jair follow Amon-Ra to the slot. I just want to keep letting Jair take their best player. I think it's a good strategy. I would like to keep seeing it. It flustered the Vikings. It worked once. Let's see if it'll work again. And then the third thing I have is keep an eye on backs in the passing game. I feel like we often leave screen games wide open. They, like we already said, target DeAndre Swift on a per-game basis, 8th most in the league. I could foresee that being a bit of a problem if they let them kind of just dump off all game and get yak, because we're not a very good tackling team either. And so I think it's going to be a big test for the linebackers in that respect, and we'll talk about that a bit when we have players to watch.
Yeah, but I think Quay Walker's been doing pretty well, and their Football Outsiders grades covering running backs is pretty good. Though that I don't know how much that takes into account the tackling that follows those receptions.
Yeah. And I think honestly, I think the Packers do better on routes out of the backfield. This is just my opinion, just from watching. I haven't gone back and actually ran the numbers, and I should. I feel like the Packers do better against actual routes out of the backfield from running backs than they do against design screens. I feel like design screens absolutely kill them. And so what did you have for
a tackling? So what do I want to see from the Packers? I want to see them pressure Goff up the middle against their guards, who are their kind of the weak links, I think, in their offensive line. And if Frank Ragnow can't go, then the whole center of their line could be a mess. What I want to do is so Goff is not what you'd call mobile. So I want to get him off of his spot and hurry him up. I think he's had too much time to sit back there in the last few games. What I want to see is maybe playing Slayton at the nose again.
Yes,
and
I think that was a great
Kenny Clark.
I think that was a great decision by them last game to play Slayton at the nose and play Kenny at 3. That was such a good decision.
So you could now get Kenny going against their guards who are weaker, and have Slayton, occupy
just Slayton.
The center
just take Ragnow. Don't let him help anyone. Yeah. Just hold him.
And then let Kenny beat up on their more poorly rated guards. I want to see them just run the ball a crap ton with Jones and Dillon, take advantage of their weak running game. Detroit's coverage grades by DVR are also bad against tight ends and running backs. So I think that could also hit Tunyon and Jones in the passing game, as well as the running backs running. And Detroit is also fourth worst at defending deep shots per DVOA, and are particularly they're worse on the outside than up the middle, or at least short middle. So I think there are going to be some chances, though maybe don't tell Aaron Rodgers this too much, for deep shots.
He's going to throw them. He's going to overthrow them. They're going to be out there. You don't need to tell him to throw deep shots, Dad. He's going to throw it downfield. It's just, I think it's like a 25%, 10% chance that actually gets completed, because he's just chucking it. He's like, just go find it. I'm not actually putting this with any kind of touch on it. I'm just throwing this as hard as I can.
Just going to throw this out there, maybe put a little air under it every once in a while so they can run under it. Maybe it'll depend on how the game is called. They call it really tight and not let much contact happen, or are they going to let them let the defenders be physical like they did for both sides?
Past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Against Minnesota and against Miami.
The Miami, yeah, and both teams were able to do it and disrupt those the timing on some of those deep shots. But those are my sort of schematic things I want to see the Packers try against the Lions.
Yeah. Beyond that, I think they they don't need to make the offense hard to win this game. The offense should be easy. This should be very simple. They have better players on offense than the Lions have on defense. Matt LaFleur, Adam Stenavich, this should be pretty easy for you guys. And I would like to see them kind of do a lot of they should be the ones doing a lot of heavy lifting in this game. Because I don't think you need to make Rodgers work really hard to win this game. I don't think. This should be very
able to put
easy.
Up points.
Yeah. It's all about whether or not the defense can stop Goff and the Goffense, essentially.
The Goffense.
But Dad, since we're kind of wrapping up here, we talked about it a bit earlier. I think we already know who it is, but who is your player to watch for this game?
So I went just somebody on the offense and somebody on the defense. So I went Kenny Clark on the defense. If he wrecks the middle of Detroit's O-line, it'll be a really long day for Goff, and I think their offense will kind of fall apart if he forces Goff to scramble right or left and try to do something on the run and not be able to throw from structure on time. And on offense, I'll be watching Watson and Dobbs lining up wide, since Detroit's coverage is better in the middle of the field and short per Football Outsiders. So they could be looking for some big plays on the perimeter.
Yeah. For me, I like both of those. I was almost going to pick Kenny, but then I saw you picked him. My next pick was Devondre Campbell and Quay Walker.
Good thing I wrote first.
Exactly. You beat me by like 10 seconds, maybe. But yeah, I got to go Campbell and Quay, just because I think that the linebacker group has been a little up and down. Quay had a nice game last game. Feels like a while since Devondre's had a good game. He's just kind of been there. I will say, I mean, he did have a pick in the Miami game, so fair enough.
I say another pick like that against like he did in the Miami game would be nice.
Exactly. But I will say, I think they need to have big games against the Lions running backs, because I think the Lions are going to try and run the ball and probably have some success given that our run defense has been so bad. But they're going to have to keep those like 4-yard gains from becoming like 15, 20-yard gains. They're going to have to guard the running backs in the pass game on screens and stuff. They're going to have to tackle well, and that's going to be a big task for all of them. And then my other player to watch in this game is A.J. Dillon. Can he have a bit of a bounce-back game? I didn't think he played particularly well last game. Me personally, at least. I felt like it was a noticeable drop-off from Jones to Dillon. And just kind of getting him...
Well, yeah.
With
Jones
momentum.
is averaging 7.9 yards per carry.
Well, Dillon averaged like 3.6.
Last game.
Dillon had like 3.6, which
like
is not good by any
half
metric.
as many per carry.
Yeah, so clearly it's doable. The holes are there. You can hit those holes. Other players are, and you're not. We need him at full capacity for the playoff run. If they're even going to make the playoffs, they need to win this game, and they need him to play well. So that's my other player to watch. But Dad, score prediction time. What you got?
So I have the Packers putting up some points, and I'm being super optimistic here. Probably being more optimistic for the defense than is really deserved. But 34 Green Bay, 21 Detroit.
Nice.
We get to relax a little bit.
I have a very similar score line. I have Green Bay 24, Detroit 21. I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think it's going to be a nail biter. I think we're going to
have a much more sweaty palm, nervously waiting kind of score prediction.
I think we're going to be really anxious this entire game, and I think it's going to suck to watch as a Packer fan because you're just going to be white-knuckling through the whole thing. So look forward to that this weekend. But anyway, thanks so much. Hooray! Thanks so much for coming and joining us here on the Father Son Packers podcast. If you enjoy what you heard, we'll be doing a post-game, hopefully, after a Packers win that could give them a playoff spot if they win this game.
We are hoping this is not our last pregame
pod of the year, and if it is,
pod of the year.
If it is, it's been a pleasure.
We'll see. We'll see you on the other side.
Exactly. We will still be doing podcasts in the off season, one a week, talking about Packers off season plans and the draft. So come give us a listen when that happens. If you enjoy what you're listening to, come give us a follow on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We tweet when we have new episodes, any articles we find interesting, videos from the Packers locker room that reporters take and we find interesting, we'll retweet. Packers injury news, Packers other news, any stuff like that, we'll kind of pass it along to you guys if you want to come give us a follow. And then if you enjoy what you're listening to even more, come subscribe to us on YouTube at Father Son Packers Podcasts. We'd really appreciate it. It'd really help our numbers. And then you can find us and all of our podcasts there on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find us. Thanks so much for listening. Come check out the post game, hopefully after a win. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.